Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. So, today we will hear Professor Imola-Ágnes Farkas. She is a lecturer in the Department of English Language and Literature at the Faculty of Letters of Babes-Bolyai University, Cluj-Napoca, Romania. She is member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, the European Society for the Study of English, the SLE, and the Association of Researchers in Theoretical and Applied Linguistics. Her academic interests lie in theoretical linguistics, generative syntax, and formal semantics. She has published papers on resultative constructions in different languages, the syntax of adjectives, cartography, the syntax and semantics of inner aspect, the semantics of the verb, as well as syntax and semantics of cognate objects. She teaches generative syntax, formal semantics, and essay writing at BA level. She has one elective BA course on the syntax and semantics of the verb, and one MA course on syntax, semantics, pragmatics, interface phenomena. And today she is going to talk us about resultative and cognate object constructions. So thank you for coming and for giving us this lecture.
Thank you for this nice introduction. Today I'm going to talk about cognate object constructions, different cognate object constructions, and their relevance when it comes to predicate constructions such as resultative constructions. I've been working on cognate object constructions in English, Romanian, and Hungarian, three typologically different languages for 5 years now. And today I'm going to focus mostly on Romanian. When I say Romanian, I generally refer to Romance languages as well. Roughly speaking, we have the same data in French, Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese, although I have to admit that I do not speak Portuguese. First, I'm going to discuss cognate object constructions in present-day Romanian. Then I turn to Old Romanian, and then I connect this presentation on cognate object constructions to resultative and goal-of-motion constructions. Let's start by defining cognate object constructions. We are interested in these constructions in the narrowest sense, that is, we have a verb that takes an object NP or DP, the head noun of which is a nominalization of the verb stem. This cognate object is both semantically and morphologically related to the verb. In less formal terms, we sometimes say that it is a semantic and morphological copy of the verb. One canonical example given in literature is the one in example 1, to sleep a sound sleep, in order to avoid tautology between the verb and the cognate object, again, which is derived from the root of the verb. In most cases, we need a pre or post modifier. According to the most recent classification, we talk about transitive cognate object constructions, such as to do deeds. This is a structure built on a prototypical transitive verb, which obligatorily needs a direct object, which can be a cognate or a non-cognate object, such as to do deeds. The object has a concrete meaning, it is either singular or plural, and it can be freely passivized. Then we talk about transitivizing cognate object constructions, such as to sing a song, to dance a dance. These are built on a derived anergative verb, that is, an anergative verb that can appear with or without a post-verbal direct object nominal. In this case, the object is only accidentally cognate with the verb. It does not denote an event. It is a fully referential argument. Therefore, it does not share the properties of aspectual cognate objects, as we are going to see in a minute. Last but not least, the literature talks about aspectual COCs, and these are the most interesting and most problematic ones, especially when it comes to Romanian and Romance languages. Again, to sleep a sound sleep. Built on a prototypical anergative verb, which means the verb never takes a direct object, an internal argument. Exceptionally, when it does, it must be a cognate object. It must be a nominal derived from the root of the verb. And again, in order to avoid redundancy, we usually need a pre or post modifier. The modifier is, in most cases, obligatory. The cognate object is a non-referential and non-thematic nominal, which does not have the status of a sub-categorized internal argument. It's not, the verb does not sub-categorize for this nominal. Interestingly, this internal argument does not pass the passive or passivization test. It cannot appear in the derived subject position. A sound sleep was slept by John. No. It cannot be replaced by a pronoun. John slept it. It doesn't work. It cannot constitute the answer to a what type of question. What did John sleep? A sound sleep? No. It cannot be modified by relative clause. John slept that sound sleep which he often sleeps in the afternoon. And it cannot be replaced by a similar noun, a synonym or a hyponym. John slept a sound slumber, as opposed to the cognate object of a transitive or transitivizing COC. The construction is stylic. Interestingly, the verb phrase is compatible both with the for and the in-time adverbial, which is very problematic, but we can draw the conclusion that the construction is stylic with an event-result interpretation. I would like to turn to present-day Romanian and present-day Romance languages. Let's see what we have in this class of languages. In most cases, we prefer a light verb construction, such as the one in 2a, built with the verb to do, to make, to give, to have, or a construction where the object is not derived from the root of the verb. It's a non-cognate object, or it is a cognate object, but it is not expressed by a DP, but a prepositional phrase. A plunge lacrima mare, to cry bitter tears. That's fine, that's not problematic. Or to rejoice with great joy. Again, prepositional phrases are not problematic. But what we do not have in modern Romanian are these traditionally classified aspectual COCs. One example in 3a, to sleep, sound sleep, is impossible in Romanian. We do have some transitive and transitivizing COCs in a biblical and literary text. I've been working on different translations of the Bible into Romanian, and I've compared different traditions to see what happens, what kind of changes we witness in transitive and transitivizing COCs in Romanian. The examples in 3b and 3c. We also have transitive and transitivizing COCs in everyday speech. Most of them are built on verbs of recreation or creation, such as a cânta, to sing, to build, to dance, to draw, to play, to paint, to tell a story. In this case, it would be a cognate object construction, to write, to dream, to build. We also find transitive or transitivizing COCs built with verbs of consumption, to eat, to drink. And I think we also need to mention the verbs to live and die. Interestingly, syntactically they are problematic. Interestingly, we do find these COCs even in Romance languages which do not allow aspectual cognate object constructions. A few examples in 3D, a dansa, dans, lent, to dance, a slow dance, a cânta, cântece frumoase, to sing beautiful songs, to eat cooked food, in this case Romanian allows the COC, or to live one's life, to die a natural death. These are not problematic. Now, when we turn to Old Romanian, we discovered some extremely interesting data. Romanian COCs, especially in Old Romanian, have been intensely studied in the literature. They are extremely frequent in Old Romanian, where they have mostly a stylistic distribution. During the first period between 1521 and 1640, they are extremely frequent in different religious texts. During the second period, 1640-1780, we notice that they are slowly reduced. Either the CO is replaced by a non-cognate synonym or hyponym, or we introduce a prepositional phrase and then we no longer have an NPDP, or we introduce a light verb or a verbal synonym, and so on and so forth. They are less frequent in Middle or pre-modern Romanian, and very rare in modern Romanian, as we have already seen. where they are used especially in religious and literary texts, with the exception of verbs expressing creation and or consumption. So I wanted to take a close look at different cognate object constructions in Old Romanian. The starting point for my research was the collection of those 109 Old Romanian texts established for the syntax of Romanian, edited by Gabriela Pana din Delegant, published in 2016 by Oxford University Press. Out of these 109 texts, I found and looked into and read 74 different texts, both original and translations. 19 of these did not contain a COC that would correspond to the above definition and restriction, either because there was only a semantic connection between the verb and the cognate object, or it was a prepositional phrase, and so on and so forth. 15 texts did contain the type of COC that I'm interested in, transitive, transitivizing, or even aspectual. And if I were to give a number, a huge list, if I were to give you a number, I would say that, roughly speaking, 200 different verb cognate object pairs. What is interesting is that in Old Romanian we find a large number and a wide variety of transitivizing and, more importantly, aspectual COCs as well, both in original, that is non-translated, and in translated texts. I'm going to present the data on transitive and transitivizing COCs as well, but we are especially interested in aspectual COCs. These are relevant when it comes to our discussion on resultative constructions. As I've already mentioned, at one point during my research, I attempted to comparatively analyze two biblical texts from Old Romanian and Middle Romanian period to see what kind of changes we witness in the same verse taken from two different Bibles, the Bucharest Bible, published in 1688, and the Bible from Cluj, 1795. The first one belongs to the Old Romanian period, the second belongs to the Middle Romanian period, and it seems, based on what we have in the literature, that in the Middle Romanian period we witness this all these techniques which are meant to replace this semantic and morphological connection between the verb and the cognate object construction. Different techniques that I've noticed, which again all contribute to the idea that in Middle Romanian COCs are less frequent. The text introduces a light verb construction. We have the example, the pairs of sentences in 4A and 4B. Žrtvuire, žrtva, sacrifice, as opposed to bring, sacrifice. They introduce a synonym for the verb a numi Adam numele, au chemat Adam numele, called his wife's name. They introduce another non-cognate object or a hyponym, such as the two examples in 6. Mâncare am să mănânc, am mânca bucatele, I have food to eat. They replace the NP or DP object with a PP adjunct. The example is 7. I wondered with great wonder, mă mirai mirare, versus m-am mirat cu mirare, a very frequent technique. Last but not least, in some cases, they leave out the cognate object altogether. Ne îmbătăm beție versus să ne îmbătăm, we'll fill ourselves with strong drinks. Let's see the data. Again, Old Romanian first, the verb, and then some properties of the cognate object. Transitive COCs are very frequent. There's a long list of verbs. I try to categorize them into transitive, obligatory transitive, derived anergative, and prototypical anergative verbs. I'm going to go through the list. We have some examples in 9. The verb a face, to do, to make, tăia, to cut, a trimite, to send, and so on and so forth. Transitivizing COCs, again, most often express either creation, recreation, or consumption, such as a bea, to drink, a cânta, to sing, a citi, to read, a îmbuca, to eat, again, to learn, to play, a mânca, to eat, to narrate, a povesti, to write, a scrie, to dream, to build, to paint. And some other verbs, we have some examples in 10. And what is interesting is, again, that we have, I would say, a large or a wide variety of aspectual COCs as well, built on prototypical anergative verbs such as a alerga, to run, a umbla, to walk, a munci, to work, a somna, to sleep, a tângui, to weep, a boli, to aim, a cugeta, to think, a dormi, a dormita, again to sleep, a fugi, to run, a greși, to err, a locui, to dwell, a lucra, to work, a odihni, to rest, and so on and so forth. Some examples in 11. I'm moving to go through all these data. Let's focus on the features of the verb. They are not only atelic, anergative, but also telic, unaccusative verbs. According to the definition given in the literature, aspectual COCs are built on prototypical anergative verbs, and this is what we expect. An atelic anergative verb combining with a cognate object construction, which is again derived from the root of the verb, and it gives rise to a telic construction. How can we explain the fact that we can combine, let me use this general term, we can combine a telic unaccusative verb with such an object? What would be the syntactic semantic spectral rule of the object if the verb is a telic unaccusative verb? And what would be the syntactic position? Actually, if we take a look at the literature, we find telic unaccusative verbs even in English, in other languages. We know about unaccusative verbs that they require a single argument, which is initialized as a direct object, which, because of the EPP, moves to the final subject position. The question is, if the internal argument position is occupied, where do we generate? Where do we merge? Do we merge the cognate object construction? Usually, the solution given in the literature is to say that in that case, the cognate object adjoins the verb phrase, so it is outside the VP. So not only atelic, anergative, but also telic unaccusative verbs. The example given in 12 is very problematic. Come and fetch wine and we'll fill ourselves with strong drinks, and îmbătăm beție. A se îmbăta, to get drunk, is a result verb or a telic inherently change of state verb. Morphologically, it is derived with the prefix in or into, and the adjective root beat, drunk, and the suffix a, with the meaning become in a, the intransitive, where a stands for the adjective that the adjectival verb is derived from. The CO is associated with a stylistic choice. Let's not forget that this is from the Bible, and most examples from the Bible are associated, and biblical texts are associated with a stylistic choice. It has an emphatic function. It is an intensifier or emphasizer of the event of the verb. And as I've already mentioned, the only way to syntactically explain the position of the CO is to assume that it adjoins the verb phrase, since the internal argument position is already taken. In Ramchand's lexical syntactic terms, we can explain such and similar examples by claiming that there is an incorporation of phonetic material from complement position into the res head, and under association of the A feature, where again A is the adjective the verb is derived from, and this allows the insertion of the CO in the complement position of the res. This is illustrated in 13 in the bracketed string, the simplified bracketed string in 13. We also find denominal verbs, verbs derived from nominal root, nu postesc Sfintele Posturi, I do not have holy fastings. The CO can be argued to be post-syntactically inserted in the internal argument position, which already contains a trace or copy left by the element undergoing incorporation. Again, if we turn to Remchur's lexical syntactic terms, we can say that there is the incorporation of phonetic material from complement position into the prot or proc head, and under association of the N feature, where N is again the nominal the verb is derived from. And this is why, or this is how we can insert the CO in the complement position of proc, illustrated in 15. Some of the features of the cognate object, although the presence of the pre or post modifier is the predominant pattern in the corpus in order to avoid redundancy tautology between the two building blocks of the construction. I've also cases, and several cases where the cognate noun is not modified at all. Two examples in 16, tempted, temptation, or order, to order, he should order him or give in order. As far as the semantic interpretation is concerned, they are claimed in the literature to have an event, a result or resultant object, or an ambiguous event-result interpretation. In Romanian, as we are going to see in a minute, certain suffixes have developed a specialization towards a particular reading. And let's see the way in the Old Romanian corpus the cognate object is or can be expressed. First of all, let's see how the supine nominal can or cannot be in the CO position. It is the nominalization with the most verbal properties. This means that with very few exceptions, it gives rise to a complex event nominal interpretation. It is considered to be imperfective or unbounded. This is why we can argue in favor of its inability to express a single bounded event in time or space. Nominals that refer only to the event but never express the result of the event itself cannot appear in a COC. Therefore, and this is shown in the corpus as well, there are no supine nominals as cognate objects. So we do not find VPs such as a tângui, to weep, the weep, again derived with the supine suffix, a făgăduitul, completely unacceptable. Instead, what we have, as we'll see in the next subsection, an infinitive, it's fine, tânguiră, tânguire, the re is the infinitive suffix, or făgăduințe, ce mi-am făgăduit lui Hristos. The infinitive nominal is a nominalization with basically verbal properties specialized for a complex event nominal reading. It has a higher degree of nominality as opposed to the supine nominal. It can also very easily develop a result nominal interpretation. It can get a plural inflection. It can appear with a definite article. It can be coordinated with another nominal. Therefore, it is more nominal than the supine. Infinitival COs ambiguous between an eventive and result interpretation can appear in a COC, but in such a configuration the result interpretation becomes prominent. Trimiteți trimiter, celor care nu au, sendings to those who do not have, gătiră tunuri și altă gătire, they prepared canons and they made other preparations. The re suffix has a telic feature, it derives transitions and focalizes both on the culmination and the state resulting from the culmination of the event. It operates on transitive and unaccusative verbs. Again, we have a long list. I'm not going to go through the list. All of them are derived with the help of the re suffix, that is the infinitive suffix in Romanian, adunare, apropiare, apucare, arătare, and so on and so forth. Interestingly, I've also found unergative-based infinitives, dormire, plângere, tânguire, umblare, and there are two relevant examples in 19. They are impossible in present-day Romanian. They are not problematic in Old Romanian in these biblical and religious texts. One thing that I forgot to mention when it comes to comparing different biblical texts, let's come before moving on. It's very, very important. It was here, the different techniques I've discovered while comparing one Bible dating from Old Romanian period 1688 and the other one from the Middle Romanian period 1795. We need to go beyond the linguistic part of these texts because we also need to take into account the source text, the ones that represented the starting point of these different translations. And I did have help from my colleagues from the Faculty of Orthodox Theology. They did provide me with the original texts, and it seems that even when we take into consideration the starting point or the starting points of these Romanian translations, it is still true that, roughly speaking, there is a linguistic difference between the two texts. And again, the second, the one dating from Middle Romanian, starts to slowly do away with this cognateness between the verb and the object. The same in this case. It is true that we need to take into consideration the original source text, but even with this in mind, we can claim that there are serious differences between the two periods of Romanian when it comes to the cognate object construction. The verbal nominals, they yield mainly a result interpretation. They lack verb-related properties and have a purely or primarily nominal syntax. They denote the result of the event of the verb. Again, when we take a look at the corpus, we find a wide variety of the verbal nominals. In Romanian, there are several specialized suffixes within this category, such as ura cognate nominals, which outnumber all the other nominals derived by means of a specialized suffix. We have some examples. Then there are the CO nominals ending in ansa, ensa, insa, which can also be derived from a transitive or intransitive verb. The verb can be eventive or stative. The suffix eală, ială, ală. In older Romanian we preferred ală. Amărgeală, deceit, cheltuială, spending, făgăduială, and so on. The very few ciune, iciune, eciune, iune, the verbal nominals found in the Old Romanian corpus are obsolete and no longer used in modern Romanian. Again, 2-3 examples. And last but not least, there is a small class of COs expressed by a verbal noun derived by means of the suffix mânt, ment, mânt, different varieties of the same suffix, îmbrăcăminte, rugăminte, and also ție. Last but not least, we have zero-derived nominals, which are usually regarded as simple event nominals, but they can also receive a complex event or result interpretation, therefore mirroring the behavior of those nominals that are derived with a specialized suffix, as well as the behavior of the infinitive. They have a nominal suffix, they can appear in coordination with other nominals, boală, botez, cântec, song, chin, torture, cuget, thinking, gust, gust, taste, cuvânt, word, dar, gift, and so on and so forth. Again, a long list of zero-derived nominals. This event versus result interpretation becomes obvious in cases where the language allows doublets, two different nominal forms, one of which is the zero-derived nominal and the other the re infinitive, as in ceartă, certare, quarreling, cântec, cântare, song, singing, fapt, facere, deed, ispită, ispitire, temptation, miros, mirosire, smell, smelling, and so on. The former is the result nominal, denoting the entity that results from the verbal event. It is the resultant object, the referent of which is produced or created by the action of the verb. The latter is the event nominal, and the entire construction denotes that the referent of the nominal in the syntactic subject position, that is the agent, has created a realizational instantiation of the given event. We have some pairs of examples, 20 strigare, strige, shouting to shout, shouting, strigând, strigătură, making the second shout, mirosi, mirosire, or mirosi, mirosul. Let's summarize what we have discussed so far, and then we turn to the relevance of this discussion. Again, in Old Romanian, we find a large number and a wide variety of transitive, transitivizing, and aspectual COCs with extremely interesting syntactic semantic properties as far as the verb, as far as the CO is concerned. On the one hand, the verb can be not only an atelic unergative but also telic unaccusative, which at first sight is problematic. The cognate nominal denotes a result, objects that are almost exclusively event denoting, that is, the supply nominal, are impossible in this construction, and those nominals which are ambiguous between an event and a result interpretation, such as the infinitive nominal, can appear in this construction, but then the result interpretation becomes prominent. Let's take a look at this data from a larger perspective, and let's see how or where it is going to help us. Initially, I've been working on resultative and motion constructions in Romanian and generally Romance languages, and then after finishing my dissertation, I turned to cognate object constructions, and at first sight it seemed that I have been working on two different independent constructions. It turns out that there is a closer relationship between these three constructions. It seems, according to the literature, that there is a conceptual similarity and a cross-linguistic correlation between goal of motion constructions and strong or true resultative constructions. We'll see in a minute what we mean by strong or true resultative constructions, and to a lesser degree between these two telicity-marking constructions and aspectual COCs. So not all COCs, but one subclass or subcategory of cognate constructions. A motion construction, the type of motion construction we are interested in, is the one illustrated in 22a. This is a classic example of a motion, goal of motion construction. The bottle floated into the cave. We have an atelic, unergative manner of motion verb, followed by a past B introduced by into. True or strong resultative constructions, such as the one in 22b, John hammered the metal flat, where we have an activity verb combining with a sentence final predicate expressed by an adjective result predicate. The sentence, these two, again, are conceptually linked, and there is a cross-linguistic correlation between these two, in the sense that those languages that allow these motion constructions and these resultative constructions are the ones that also allow aspectual COCs, such as to sleep a sound sleep. In all these cases, we have an atelic verb combining with a sentence final predicate or PP or cognate object construction, and it is this satellite, it is this element outside the verb which gives rise to a telic interpretation. It's not the verb. In the literature, Romanian and Romance languages are called verb-framed languages. That is, in order to derive a telic construction in these languages, we need to have a verb that inherently denotes change of state or directed motion, and it's not the satellite, it's not the element outside the verb which could or should give rise to a telic interpretation. In satellite frame languages, such as English, Hungarian to a certain extent, where path or result is lexicalized by the satellite, again an element that is outside the verb, the goal, PP, complement into the cave, the AP result predicate, or the aspectual cognate object, all three telicity-marking constructions should, or it seems, based on what we know, what we have so far, are equally available. In verb frame languages, where path result is not expressed by the satellite but by the verb, this is why they are called verb frame languages, all three telicity-marking constructions should equally be unavailable. And again, based on our data, it seems that in Romanian and in Romance languages, we do not have the bottle floated into the cave, we do not have John hammered the letter flat, and we do not have Mary slept or something. We have slightly different constructions, I'm going to focus on them in a minute, but we do not have these constructions when an atylic verb combines with such a satellite or sentence final element in order to give rise to a atylic bounded construction. Again, Romanian and Romance languages in general are verb frame languages, therefore these languages lack all these three constructions. We do not have goal of motion structures where a non-directional manner of motion verb combines with a goal or path PP into the cave. By the way, the sentence means that the bottle was outside the cave and as a result of floating it ended up in the cave. Okay. John hammered the metal flat means John hammered the metal and as a result the metal became flat, which means that the metal was not flat before John hammered it, or at least not as flat as it became as a result of the hammering event. And there are no aspectual COCs, again where a prototypical anorgative verb combines with a modified CO. Again, I do not speak Portuguese, but I know from the literature that that's exactly the same in European and Brazilian Portuguese as in Romanian, as in French, as in Italian, as in Spanish. So let's see what we have. We do not have float into the cave type of motion constructions in Romanian. What we have in Romanian, and again generally Romance languages, we can have a motion construction based on a verb of inherently directed motion. So the verb on its own expresses directed motion. Motion is, or movement is directed towards an end location, and then manner is lexicalized by an optional adjunct, such as stikla, intrat, and pesce, plutind. The bottle got into or entered in cave, literally entered in cave, floating, and the ing gerund can be an optional adjunct which expresses the manner in which motion movement takes place. But the verb independently encodes change of location, intra, which is again combined with a morphologically simple preposition, in. We can also have non-directional pure manner of motion verbs, which combine with a morphologically simple prepositional phrase. Now, there's a distinction between, that's exactly what we lack in Romanian, the bottle floated into the cave. To be more precise, we do have constructions such as sticla a plutit în peșteră, but that means that the bottle floated in the cave, so it was inside the cave and floated around in the cave, but no change of location from a position that is outside the cave and as a result of floating ending up in the cave. So in fact 24a is correct, but not under the change of location interpretation, only the bottle floated in the cave interpretation. We do not have and we cannot have the bottle floated into the cave. Once the verb, as Romanian and Romance languages are verb-framed languages, the verb pluti, to flow, does not express directed motion. The entire construction remains an atylic locative interpretation, floated in the cave. That's fine, but not atylic directional reading. We also have non-directional pure manner of motion verbs, combined with a path P headed by până, up to, until, jusqu'à, French, fino a, Italian, and so on and so forth. There has been a debate in the literature whether they are the bottle floated into the cave type of constructions. It seems that they are not. They are not problematic in Portuguese, in Spanish, in Italian. We take the float type of verb and combine it with a path P headed by such a preposition. Why is 25 different from the bottle floated into the cave, English-Germanic type of sentence. It seems that in such a similar cases, which are again not problematic, we can combine puna, past piece, with any type of motion verb. They are adjuncts. What we need in a satellite framed language such as English is a PP occupying the complement position and being or functioning as a satellite. This is an adjunct which adjoins the verb phrase. It's not problematic to adjoin puna PPs to such a verb phrase. They are not problematic, but they are not counterexamples to this generalization. What we also have in Romanian and Romance languages, directional manner of motion verbs. There is a difference between a pluti, non-directional manner of motion verbs, and directional manner of motion verbs, which in addition to expressing manner of motion, also express direction. And then they are combined with a morphologically simple PP, such as in, or pe, on, and so on and so forth. Again, they are not problematic. They are not purely manner of motion verbs, such as to roll, se rostogoli, to run, a fugi, and so on. They may have, the example 26, the word rolled into the pool, mingea s-a rostogoli în bazin, may have both or either a telic, call of motion, and an atelic manner of motion interpretation, as shown by its compatibility with the in and the four-time adverbial. There's, I would say, a small set of verbs belonging to this class of direction manner of motion verbs. They are not counterexamples to the generalization which says that Romanian is a verb-framed language. Last but not least, we also have transitive denominal verbs with the meaning to put in n, where n is the nominal the verb is derived from, and then combined with a morphologically simple PP. L-au întemnițat la Rahova, they imprisoned him at Rahova. Now, as far as resultative constructions are concerned, in Romanian and in Romance languages, we do not have strong or true resultative constructions, where an atelic activity or manner verb combines with an AP result predicate, such as hammer the metal flat. I've been testing this example in 28 for some years. It's very weird. It's ungrammatical. It doesn't work. Romanian and Romance languages, and more generally verb-framed languages, have what we call in the literature weak resultatives. That is, the verb independently expresses change of state, which encodes result, and then usually not an AP but a PP result predicate, which only lexicalizes or specifies the result state, renders the vague endpoint of the event more precise, or highlights the degree of the outcome of the event. With change of state verbs such as to break, to tear, to cut, which inherently denote change of state, the result predicate into pieces, into two pieces, into small pieces, and so on and so forth, only lexicalizes the result state already encoded in the meaning of the verb. To grow big, which is not, at least in Romanian, is not considered to be redundant. It should be, because the meaning of the predicate is already encoded in the meaning of the verb. When you grow, you automatically become bigger. Avionul s-a rupt în bucăți, the plane broke into pieces, it's fine. But again, we have the resultative construction simply because the verb, and precisely because the verb already encodes change of state. Verb-framed language. If the verb does not encode direction, if the verb does not encode change, then we do not have motion result construction. What is interesting is that we cannot say that this means that we have weak resultatives and not strong in Romanian Romance languages. But this does not mean that all weak resultatives possible in English Germanic languages are also possible in Romanian Romance languages. Because John broke the vase open, exactly the same change of state verb, with an AP predicate is ungrammatical. In Romanian and in Romance languages, we prefer a preposition phrase. That's enough. It's not only the verb, we have to pay attention to the type of the verb, but also the type of the predicate. So 30A is completely out. I think the same in Portuguese. Now, what is interesting about 30B, Peter painted the fence green. Again, I've been testing this with mostly my students and generally native speakers. The result predicate is expressed by an AP. An adjective phrase. I gave my students a slightly different example. We have this tradition of painting eggs red before Easter. And I gave them this very clear context, and if I remember correctly, it was a few days before Easter. And I asked them, how would you say this in Romanian? A few days before Easter, we painted the eggs red. And I gave them the example with an adjective phrase. A vopsi ouăle roșii, paint the eggs red. They said, well, we can have the resultative, so they painted so that the eggs became red, or they painted the eggs which were already red. And the context was crystal clear, a few days before Easter, and that's a huge tradition in our culture. Still, besides the resultative, we can have the non-resultative as well. And the same in 30B. I included a question mark, it's not ungrammatical. We have the resultative, paint the fence into green, but we can have the non-resultative as well, painted the fence which was already green. So, in order to have a crystal clear result interpretation, besides the type of verb, we also need to be more restrictive when it comes to the predicate. It seems that in Romance languages we prefer the PP or different NPs, predicative bare nouns, but not adjective phrases, because the adjective phrase also gives rise to a non-resultative interpretation. Do we have the same in Portuguese, in 30B, painted the fence green with an adjective phrase, resultative and a non-resultative as well? Painted the green fence, which was already green, and painted him again into blue or whatever. I think it works. I think 30B is ambiguous. It should be. This is what I expect. No? No? Meaning only resultative interpretation?
It needs a genitive preposition.
You need something in front of the adjective? Exactly. În verde, in green. Yep. Exactly the same. But it's a change of state verb. Right? So Romance languages are very restricted. Only weak resultatives, but then again we need to narrow them down into the ones where the predicate is mostly a PP and not an adjective phrase. So we have the example in 31, Petru a vopsit gardul în verde. We can also have referential NP, which is an elliptical prepositional phrase. Ion a spart geamul țândăr, John has broken the window splinters, which is an elliptical PP simply because of the fact that once we introduce a modifier, mii de țândări, thousands of splinters, we have a prepositional phrase. If it stands on its own, it's an NP, but it's actually an elliptical prepositional phrase, which again is shown by the presence of a modifier. We can also have predicative bare nouns, such as 32B, and some other expressions. The lake froze solid, which again is impossible in Romance languages. Lacul a înghețat solid, doesn't work, with an adjective phrase, although we have a change of state verb. Instead of an adjective, another technique that we can rely on, besides the PP and the referential NP, a predicative bare noun, such as bokna, which means bone, and it is this fixed expression in Romanian, a îngheța bokna, to freeze solid, to freeze as hard as the bone. or angezattun, to freeze cannon, again as hard as solid as, okay? And a wide variety of other, I would say fixed expressions, again where the sentence final element is a predicative bare noun. This is again fine. But when it comes to adjective phrases, it seems that we have serious problems, ambiguous, resultative, non-resultative interpretations. So, present-day Romanian, no float into the cave type of motion constructions, no resultatives such as hammer, the metal flat. If it is true that there is this cross-linguistic, conceptual similarity and cross-linguistic correlation between the three types of constructions, not all motion constructions, not all resultatives, and not all cognate object constructions, but these subclasses of constructions. If there is a conceptual similarity and a cross-linguistic correlation between these three, in the sense that if a language allows 22A and B, it also allows C, or in other words, we have languages allowing 22A and B only if they also allow 22C, and languages which do not have 22A and B seem to be exactly the ones that lack the type of constructions illustrated in 22C, we are faced with this huge problem concerning Old Romanian. So present-day Romanian, the situation is what we expect. Romanian is a verb-frame language. We do not have these three constructions. But we do have in Old Romanian, I'd recall aspectual series, a wide variety, I would say, of transitive, transitivizing, and more exactly, or more precisely, more interestingly, aspectual series as well. Now, if we have this similarity and cross-linguistic correlation between these three, does it mean that Old Romanian, which allows aspectual COCs, also allows these motion constructions and these resultative constructions, or not? Then I turned, once I finished cognate object constructions, and I discovered this similarity and cross-linguistic correlation, I turned to Old Romanian again, this time trying to find these motion and these result constructions. Do we find them or not? Maybe we do not, and then Romanian is a counterexample. We can say from the perspective of Romanian that there is no such correlation between the three constructions. I turned to Old Romanian again, trying to find float into the cave and hammer the metal flat type of constructions. If we have a spectral COCs, we expect to find these constructions as well. There is a striking contrast between modern Romanian and Old Romanian as far as the availability of spectral COCs is concerned. Does Old Romanian exhibit satellite frame behavior more generally, just like present-day Romanian? Does Old Romanian have both goal of motion and strong resultative constructions? At first sight, while reading the literature, it seems that we do have theoretical support from the earlier stages of some Romance languages, such as Old Middle French and Old Catalan. The question was, is Old Romanian similar to Old Middle French, where, again, present-day stages of these Romance languages are verb-frame languages, but it seems that earlier stages exhibit some satellite frame behavior. Is it the same in Romanian or not? If yes, then we contribute to what we already know from the literature. If not, again, we are faced with other problems. Let's try to explain again the Old Romanian data, considering the fact that there are spectral COCs. My first approach, or my first hypothesis, was to assume that Old Romanian is similar to these earlier stages of Romance languages such as French, Catalan, in the sense that it's not a satellite frame language, it's called a weak satellite frame language. I'm going to explain what that means. Old Romance languages present a satellite frame pattern, or they exhibit satellite frame behavior, with Latin being considered a weak satellite frame language. So it seems that this is not a binary division of languages into satellite and verb frame, but in between we have a third category, again, especially from the perspective of earlier stages of some Romance languages. So satellite, weak satellite framed and verb frame languages. A weak satellite frame language is a language where path and the verb are two different morphemes but form one phonological word. There's a rich literature on this. A verbal prefix and a manner of motion verb to express directionality and form a directional telic verb phrase. The example in 33a is from Latin. So I've highlighted the part that we are interested in. De coron, the verbal prefix, and run, manner of motion verb, and they together express directionality and form a directional telic VP. 32b, medieval French, ad voler, it's fine. Old Catalan, I'm not going to pronounce this. Again, we have a to, a verbal prefix, and then caminar, walk, to express together, again, directionality and form a directional telic verb phrase. Latin also allows resultatives based on affixal particles. We have one example in 34a. I've highlighted the part that we're interested in. And Old French also allows AP resultatives which are not possible in modern French. It seems again that residues of the satellite frame system involving the manner conflation mechanism are traceable more generally in Old Romance languages, although again these Romance languages, present-day stages of these Romance languages are verb framed, are considered to be verb framed. Earlier stages do seem to exhibit satellite frame behavior, and it has become very fashionable to study languages from a diachronic perspective. The claim that verbal prefixes in at least some Old Romance languages have an aspectual value and are able to change the aspectual properties of the predicate, turn it from an atelic verb into a telic VP, is based on French and Catalan texts dating back from the 10th, 13th century. Moreover, according to one diachronic analysis of AP resultatives in French and verb particles, it seems that these constructions have disappeared in the 16th century of the French language. Now, Old Romanian refers to a period that starts from the early 16th century, again more precisely 1521, and ranges to the late 18th century, more precisely 1780. The first original, that is non-translated text to have survived in Romanian dates back from 1521, and this Letters of is only preceded by Psalteria Hormozaki, which is known to have been copied around the year 1500. Therefore, my prediction was to say that residues of the satellite frame system involving the manner conflation mechanism cannot and will not be traced in Old Romanian. I could not go back to the 10th century or 12th century or 13th century simply because there are no texts from these centuries. The first one dates from 1521. So when I became aware of this piece of information, I did not really expect too much of Romanian. I did not expect such ad coron type of VPs in Old Romanian. All these disappeared before or by the 16th century or even before. I focused initially only on the texts from the 16th century, between the ones dating between 1521 and 1600, simply because I assumed that if there are constructions exhibiting this type of weak satellite frame behavior, they are first and foremost in these earlier texts. If they are not found in the texts from the 16th century, then they will not be present in later texts, definitely not in the 18th century. And then again, I went back to these Old Romanian texts. I borrowed all these books from the library, and I tried to search for motion and result constructions. Now, interestingly, what I found is exactly what we find in present-day Romanian. And again, this was my prediction. I did not really expect to find weak satellite frame behavior. Exactly what we have in present-day Romanian. That is a verb of inherently directed motion, such as a se duce, to go, right? To arrive, to enter, to go, to fall. All these are inherently directed motion. These are not problematic, and then they can combine with a morphological simple PP to derive a motion construction, but the entire directed interpretation is due to the verb, because it's a verb frame language, and not to the sentence final PP, or more precisely the predicate heading the prepositional phrase. So dus însus predunere, this is on the very first page, the very first text, scrisoarea lui Neacșu din Câmpulung. We also have directional manner of motion verbs, which are again not problematic, such as a fugi, to run, a se rostogoli, to roll. It's fine. Again, they combine with a morphologically simple PP. But I have not found purely manner of motion verbs, such as a pluti, combined with prepositions such as in, with a directed motion interpretation, float into. If we have this combination, we have the atypic interpretation, float in the cave, but not into. The preposition in Romanian, in Romance languages, even in Old Romanian, is not able to give rise to this telic directed interpretation. It's the verb. If we have such an interpretation, it must be the verb. Resultative constructions, exactly the same. That is, the verb inherently expresses change of state, right? Such as a crește, to grow here, a tăia, to cut, to break, and so on and so forth. And then either an adjective phrase or most probably a PP. Again, the predicate only lexicalizes or further specifies the result state already included in the meaning of the verb. To cut into two, into smaller pieces, into, and so on and so forth. Noi duc la BSE până nu cresc mari, not grow big. Again, I've mentioned this example. It's obligatory in the adjective phrase, and it's not redundant, although, again, the meaning of the predicate is included in the meaning of the verb. În două nu taie, into, do not cut into two. The motion and result constructions found in the Old Romanian text fully conform to the classification of this stage of the language as a canonical verb frame language. Therefore, the conclusion I reached is that Old Romanian is not a weak satellite frame language, and it does not exhibit weak satellite framed behavior. Although we have aspectual COCs, and it seems that there is a similarity and cross-linguistic correlation between these three constructions. The second explanation, and it seems to be the one that does answer most of these questions, the fact that Old Romanian texts are based on translation. There are also original texts, not only translations, but there is something else that we need to account for when it comes to at least Romanian, at least Old Romanian, at least the spectral cognate object constructions. I'm not trying to disvalidate this cross-linguistic correlation between or among the three types of constructions. But it seems that there is another aspect that needs to be taken into consideration, at least from the perspective of Old Romanian. The cognate constructions reflect the influence of the source language, something that I've already mentioned. The starting point is very important, as they are copied from the original Slavonic religious documents, which in turn are taken over literally from the Greek and ultimately from the Hebrew versions of the texts. They reflect the translator's great fidelity to the source text. They are often associated with a stylistic choice and are claimed to have an emphatic function. But it is equally true that the original, that is the non-translated, and the translated texts at this stage of the language influence each other, so that a phenomenon considered to be an imitation of a foreign model, such as the cognate object construction, occurs in original texts as well. A more detailed analysis of these constructions in Romanian requires, therefore, a different and more careful approach, again, without disvalidating the cross-linguistic correlation, which also takes into consideration the source of the diachronic data. Now, as originally, I've also included Hungarian in the abstract, Romanian and Hungarian, two typologically different languages. In the remaining, until 16 minutes, so that then we can have time for questions. I am going to present the most interesting data about Hungarian, which at first sight is a satellite frame language, so it is roughly speaking similar to English and Germanic languages. Again, according to the literature, Hungarian is a strong satellite frame language, just like English is a classic example of a satellite frame language. Therefore, we expect this language to have motion, kind of motion structures, again, a non-directional manner of motion verb, followed by a goal or path, PP, or a particle, mostly a particle. Strong or true resultative constructions, an activity or manner verb with, interestingly, not an adjective phrase but a PP result predicate. It's a crucial difference between English and Hungarian. So two examples in 38a, a gyerek besétált a házba, the child walked into the house, perfectly fine. We have not only the sentence final postpositional phrase, but also a particle preceding the lexical verb walked into, and then the PP lexicalizes the meaning of the particle. We also have strong true resultatives such as hammer the metal flat, again keeping in mind that actually this is not an adjective phrase. Lapos is the adjective. We usually need a sort of suffix, either a sublative or a translative suffix, lapos ra, into flat. Therefore, it is not an AP but a PP. Now, when it comes to aspectual COCs, again, they are problematic in the sense that we do not seem to have this sleep, a sound sleep type of word phrases, or smile, a wide smile, the example in 38C. Now, without getting into the details, at first sight, so there are no aspectual COCs, some transitivizing, just like in Romance languages, biblical text translations, fine, but not in everyday language, and no aspectual COCs. What I've discovered is that in Hungarian, instead of an aspectual cognate object, which again is a semantic and morphological copy of the verb, to smile, a wide smile, what we have is a type of pseudo-object, and we have the example in 38D, which would be the counterpart, the acceptable, the grammatical counterpart of 38C. Mosolygott egy széleset, an accusative case-marked pseudo-object, without this redundancy between the two building blocks of the construction. Mary smiled one wide with an accusative case marking, which is not, technically speaking, a cognate object construction. We have all these accusative case-marked adjectives which fulfill the function of the aspectual cognate object in the language. At first sight, there are no aspectual COCs, and again, Hungarian seems to be a counterexample to this cross-linguistic correlation among the three languages. At first sight, but when we take a closer look at the language, we'll see that there's a wide variety of pseudo-objects, which again are not, technically speaking, cognate objects, but they fulfill the function of the aspectual CO in the language. Mari mosolygott egy széleset. I've put them to the test. They behave in the exact same way as aspectual COCs in languages such as English. So they cannot be passivized, they cannot appear in the derived subject position. They cannot be quantified with a strong determiner. They are not assigned any set role. They cannot be replaced by a pronoun. They cannot be modified by restrictive relative clause. They cannot constitute the answer to a myth, what type of question. They have the same aspectual interpretation, like a wide smile in English, smile, a wide smile. This is why I have been arguing the fact that, again, they fulfill the function of the aspectual cognate object in the language, and again, it seems that Hungarian is not a counterexample to this cross-linguistic generalization, although at first sight it is. So both Romanian present and Old Romanian and Hungarian at first sight seems to be problematic. Romanian might be even more problematic because of the diachronic. Hungarian at first sight does not seem to fit into the picture provided by the literature, but again, once we take a closer look at the data, we'll see that we do have this language as a satellite, or weak or strong satellite framed language, which again has all these three types of telicity-marking constructions. Thank you very much for your attention.